Hey everyone, welcome back to RacquetGuys. We're going to be looking at the top 5 power frames currently in 2024. Now make sure you stay tuned for all of the videos in this series as we're going to be updating them and adding rackets as new rackets are released. Before we get started, drop a comment down below. Let us know what you think are going to be in our list for the top 5 rackets, and let's get started. Kicking off our list at number 5 is the Head Boom MP. Head Boom MP comes in at 295 grams with a 4 points headlight balanced while strung, 60 by 19 string pattern, and a 100 square inch head size. Now, a lot of these specs are also going to be pretty familiar throughout the rest of their lineup, so you're going to hear me repeat that a few times, but don't let it fool you, they do play very differently. Personally, I really like the Boom MP. It is a little bit too low of weight for myself at 295 grams. I prefer something a little bit heavier, so for me, I'd probably spring out for the Pro, just for a little bit more weight, a little bit more control. However, at the MP, for a lot of players, beginner, intermediate, you're gonna find a lot here. Forehands feel great. Like I said, the off-center hits don't feel so unforgiving that you're necessarily gonna hate feeling those. It's not quite as stable on those shots as some of the other rackets in our list, but it is still very stable. The Auxetic 2.0 does a lot to kind of help give you some of that comfort, kind of keep you connected to the ball without losing a lot of the pop. It does also have a 64 RA flex. To be honest, most of the rackets in this list are fairly stiff. And also in 2024, flex, while it is an important value, it doesn't really tell the whole story of how a racket's gonna play, especially in terms of power. So don't pay too much attention to that flex value. Overall, a great frame. Forehands feel great, backhands feel great. Volleys can get pushed around a tiny little bit. Serve, it's really good. Because it's lower weight, it's really easy to get it through the motion. For me, maybe a little too quick through the motion. Again, just a little too light for my liking, but for most players, you're gonna find a lot to love here. Next up on the list at number 4 is the Dunlop FX 500. Similar to the Head Boom MP, the FX 500 was updated to be a little bit softer feeling at contact, without necessarily actually sort of taking out any of that stiffness in the frame. It does have, again, very similar specs, 100 square inch head size, 300 grams, unstrung weight with a 4 points headlight balance when it is strung. It does have a slightly stiffer 67 RA flex value, so it is a little bit stiffer. But like I mentioned, Dunlop updated it to make it a little bit softer feeling at contact. They actually added a little bit more of the Sonic Core by Infinergy tech into the top of the hoop to kind of help with that. They also changed the beam shape a little bit. They widened up the string spacing to give you a little bit more access to spin that you definitely did not have before. Overall, a great update versus the previous model. A little bit unforgiving off center. Doesn't feel bad off center, but you definitely don't necessarily get the result that you're looking for off center. You can feel a little bit of twist there. Onto the center of the frame though, tons of power. And it does feel fairly reined in terms of power. So while you are hitting a big ball, I don't necessarily find that I miss the ball long a lot, which is really nice, especially from a racket with a lot of power. You don't necessarily want it to feel like the ball is launching on you, which you definitely don't really get with the 500, which is great. Serves feels fantastic, again, pretty quick through the contact there. Really no issues there at all. Again, a really good option for beginner, intermediate players looking for something that's gonna give you a lot of free power, but maybe not necessarily looking for something that's just the most powerful frame. Next up at number 3 is the Yonex E-Zone 100. This is definitely one of my personal favorites on this list. Anyone who's watched our videos before knows that I like Yonex rackets. I use Yonex rackets. I've been using them forever. So I definitely like the E-Zone racket, even though it's not necessarily the best racket for me. A lot of power here on offer. Fairly comfortable as well, which is pretty typical of a Yonex frame. Also, very similar to the other rackets in this list, the E-Zone 100 comes in at a 100 square inch head size, obviously in the name, 300 grams unstrung weight, 4 points headlight balance, very similar swing weight across all the rackets. This one's at 320. And again, a slightly stiffer actually RA than the Dunlop and the Boom MP at 67 RA. So a little bit stiffer, but again, that doesn't really tell the whole tale. I find if you have a little bit of a shorter, kind of snappier swing, you kind of get a little more out of the E-Zone, as opposed to me with my little bit of a longer swing. I kind of struggle with the timing a little bit with it. Forehands feel great, very stable. A little more stable on off-center shots than the Boom and the FX 500. Not a lot, mind you, just a little bit, but it is still a little bit better there. Serves feel great, and is probably where I like this the most, is on serves. I find I was really able to find my location easily. even with this being kind of outside my normal spec range. And I think this kind of appeals to every range of player. Beginner, intermediate, even some advanced players can pick this up and really enjoy it. So I think this is very deserving at our number 3 spot. And at number 2 is the Wilson Ultra 100. The Ultra 100 is very similar in spec to all the other rackets in this list. 100 square inch head size, 300 grams unstrung weight, 4 points headlight balance once it's strung, 16 by 19 string pattern. Although it is quite a bit stiffer than the previous rackets in the list at 70 RA. Definitely feels a little stiffer when you play with it. After hitting with the Ultra 100 quite a bit actually, I do find that while some power rackets can be fairly launchy, you lose the ball long quite a bit, you really don't get that with the Ultra 100. It's very well sort of reined back a little bit. You're still hitting a big ball, it's still fairly heavy, it's got a really nice penetrating ball flight, but you don't find that you miss it long a lot, which when you're buying a racket that's sort of geared towards helping you generate a lot of power, if you're hitting a ball that's going long half the time, it's really not helping you. It's really going to be a hindrance. So something like the Ultra, where it kind of reins you in a little bit, still helps you with a lot of power, but you're not missing it long, is really good. It's also very maneuverable. I find at net actually it's really solid and stable, which is nice. A little bit more forgiving than the Dunlop FX500 and the Boom MP, especially off center, but it is still, you can get a little bit of that sort of shaky feeling if you really mishit it, but overall very stable. And it's really easy to kind of drive through the ball, which is nice. Even when you're hitting with someone who hits a little bit bigger, I find it's very stable. You don't really get pushed back very much. Overall, a super solid racket. Again, beginner, intermediate, even some advanced players, you might want to look to customize it a little bit if you're a bit more of an advanced player, but beginner intermediates are going to find a lot here. Really easy to play with, and a great spot at number 2. Now, before we give you the last racket on our list, make sure you comment down below and let us know what you think makes the top of our list. And without further ado, the number 1 racket on our top 5 power rackets for 2024, at least currently, is the Pure Drive. This really shouldn't surprise anybody. The Pure Drive really is the best racket when you're looking for something that's going to help you generate a lot of pace. Like all the other rackets in this list, very similar specs. 100 square inch head size, a 300 gram unstrung weight. Strung, it has a 4 points headlight balance. It's actually the stiffest out of all the rackets in this list at 72 RA. I know I mentioned earlier that the stiffness doesn't really tell the whole story. The Pure Drive definitely is the most powerful, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's because it's the stiffest, but I do think that it being the stiffest does help. Like the Ultra before it, I find it to be a little bit reined in. However, while it is a bit reined in, I find the control available here, especially directional control, just to be superior to all the other frames, especially when you're really trying to hit a big penetrating ball. When you're trying to hit big, you're trying to hit deep, you don't want to be missing the ball a little bit long, but you also really would like the ball to basically land exactly where you're aiming, right? You want the ball to be landing 3/4 court, maybe even a little deeper. You want it to push the player back. But if you're trying to hit angles, you want your rackets to give you those options as well. I mean, I find with the Pure Drive, you still have all those options. You can, lay off it a little bit. You can add a little bit more spin if you want. If you have a snappier swing, you can really snap through it and you get a lot out of it. Probably better with a snappier swing, in all honesty, versus me with like a really long swing. But even with a longer swing, you get a lot out of it. At net, it's very stable. It's probably the most stable out of all the rackets. Especially off-center hits, you still don't really lose a lot. If you're just a little bit outside of the sweet spot, you still get a ton of pop out of it. I find it's the heaviest ball that I was hitting out of all 5. I think the color looks great. However, it does also come in a new color this year, in the 30th anniversary color, which is basically just an amalgamation of all the Pure Drive colors of the last, 30 years. It looks great. It is the exact same racket as the Pure Drive, just a different color, but it looks awesome. So really the king of power rackets, very deserving to be at number 1. Some kind of things to note about really rackets in general. When you're looking at a list like this, top 5 power rackets, all these rackets that we looked at today are very similar in spec, and they all play somewhat similar, but they definitely feel different. But that being said, there are versions of these rackets in different weights, different head sizes, different balances, so that you can find something that's going to play a little bit better for you. For example, the Boom MP is a little too light for me, so I would go more for the Boom Pro because it's a little heavier at 310 grams and a little bit a little bit softer of a flex. Sort of would fit my game a little bit more. Same is true for lighter weight. There's a pure drive that is 285. There's one that's 270. I think there's even one that's 260 in the super light. So you can really find that racket for you in your weight or balance, whatever sort of spec you need to find. If you compare them across those different weights, they're going to be very similar still, and you're going to get the same kind of similar conclusions that we came to today in our video. So you can kind of take these and spread it out across the different weights. Thank you guys for watching. As you saw, the Pure Drive took number 1 on our list, but let us know down below, is the Pure Drive number 1 on your list? Maybe there's something else that you think is a little bit better. Just let us know down below. Also, if maybe there's some lists that you want to see us do, some rackets you want to see us take a look at, let us know down in the comments. And to keep up with all the Racket Guys, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. That'll give you all the updates on whenever our videos come out. Thanks again for watching, everyone. We'll see you guys next time.